What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs baseball channel for our Friday discussion. And it is great to have our buddy Tony Andracki from Marquee Sports Network hanging out with us here. I'm at broadcaster Mick on the socials. Get in the comments section and ask some comments. And as you can tell, he's a big Cardinals fan from his no, I'm just kidding. Illinois State, right? Different Cardinals.
Yeah, it's my alma mater, but I got, Fenway above me here too. So I got all the World Series credentials and club stuff there. So I'm an equal opportunity baseball fan today.
Well, thanks for coming and hanging out. Always great to see you. And so much to talk about, man. Like what an interesting season it's been for the Cubs. And we talked at the beginning of the year, and then here we are, before the All-Star break. The team's finally healthy, and now they can't hit. Shota Imanaga has been like Fernando Venezuela, for those of you guys that remember Fernando Mania. Craig Counsell, I think that he's been worth the money. I mean, like, the guy he's really a savant when it comes to like planning for baseball. You got a glimpse of what Hollywood Pete Crow Armstrong can do, but he's back in the minor leagues. So the injuries, why do we have all the hamstring injuries? It's been such an interesting year. And we play the Cardinals for the first time this weekend. So let's just start with Craig Counsell.
Okay.
I think he's been good, man. I mean, I can't complain at all. And honestly, on the other end of it, I'm pretty impressed with how far out he plans, and I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to this phrase, and I think about it often, but Carter Hawkins was on the Marquee broadcast. I forget if it was either earlier this month or late April, but Boog and JD were asking Carter about Counsell, and the one thing that Carter said right away was that Craig is really good at seeing around corners, which I really like that phrase in general, and it's one that stuck with me a lot since, and I feel like that's a great way to describe what Counsell really does well as a manager. He sees around corners. He can predict the future, it sometimes seems, but it's not about predicting the future. He's not, like Nostradamus or anything like that. He's just seeing the way things are trending and lining up. And he's been around baseball so much, and he understands so many different aspects of it, from being a player, from winning as a player, from being a front office member for 2 years, from being a manager for 9 years in Milwaukee, and now coming here. I think he just has a ton of experience. He's a super smart guy, and he that nothing gets by him. And so he's able to put that analysis all together and form conclusions and realize things. And he just said it yesterday again about Ben Brown and Hayden Wesneski, and he kind of saw this coming. He thought both of them were going to be really important parts of the pitching staff, and it's happened maybe a little bit earlier than he was expecting for each guy. But this is what he saw in spring. This is the way he saw them trending, and he sets these guys up to try to have success. He works with his coaching staff and everything. But I agree with you, Mick, that like I think Craig has been absolutely worth the money. And I mean, I feel like it's so hard to quantify what a manager does. And we've talked about this on this podcast a bunch, Mick. Like it's really hard to say like what a manager does and how it impacts the wins. But to me, it becomes easier when you look at a guy like Counsell and the impact that he has, that I don't think there's any question now about why his teams seem to always get the most out of their roster, why they always seem to kind of be outplaying their whatever the peripheral numbers show.
Right. Yeah. And I'm seeing that too. I got to give him credit for the way that he's made it comfortable for these young guys to come in and have success, because it's not just that I've covered the farm system for 20 years. You've known me a long time. If they stink, I'll tell you they stink. Like I don't care. It's not like they don't pay me. So it's not like I have to say anything, but I'm telling you that there's a lot of talent that the Cubs have right now, right? That's the bottom line, but it's getting those guys to be able to make the jump from AAA to the big leagues and contribute. And it might just be, like he said, maybe you go out and you make a great catch in center field one day, and maybe you get lucky and you hit a home run the next day. But he's done such a nice job of keeping expectations reasonable. And I think that's one of the areas that we've seen a lot of growth with. Finally, we get to see the best of Wesneski, right? Finally, we get to see and what he can do. I mean, the guy struggled all these years. Finally, it's like, man, this guy's really good. I didn't know he was going to make that jump. We got a glimpse of Hollywood Pete and how he can help. and Ben Brown. Like the transition for Brown to the big leagues has been great, and I got to give him credit for Shota Imanaga, even though he's a 30-year-old that pitched in Japan. He's still a rookie in Major League Baseball, and he's killing it.
Yeah, I mean, Shota's been awesome, and I think the Cubs coaching staff and Tommy Hotovy and the pitching infrastructure certainly deserves credit for Shota. But to be honest, yeah, like I think most of the credit goes to Shota and the fact that I mean he's out of this world. Like you mentioned, Fernando Valenzuela, and that's a great comparison in terms of rookie ball. But like for the Cubs, an even more recent one is Jake Arrieta in the second half of 15. I mean, this is the exact type of run that Shota is on, and it's to start his career. It's at the beginning of his season. He is, I know we're not even 2 full months into the year, but he's clearly the Cy Young and Rookie of the Year right now. He might end up getting the Cubs, another first round draft pick because of winning some of these awards as a rookie and stuff. So he's been incredible. He really has, and he deserves a lot of credit. He has this great way about him, an inner confidence, great sense of humor. And we saw a good sense of humor from Seiya Suzuki a couple years ago when he first came over and adjusted to life here in America and just life in general and playing in the majors. But Shota's even topped that. I mean, he after his last start was talking about how he loves Dunkin' Donuts coffee and like all these like great things. And I love the image of him with the Chicago Sky players, Angel Reese and Camilo Cardoso at Wrigley. And like Shota was just, he looked very fun. He seems to really, really enjoy the moment. He's a funny guy that like people, it's not laughing at, it's laughing with. Like he just seems to be a very fun loving guy. Guys love him in the Cubs clubhouse for sure. And a ton of credit to him. It would be so hard for guys to come over and adjust to life here. But also, like, I think special shout out to Jed Hoyer because he's talked with Yu Darvish and some of the other like Japanese players about how the Cubs specifically can help guys acclimate to America, to Major League Baseball. And I think Yu Darvish deserves some credit for not being in the Cubs organization for 4 years and still having such great relationships with people here that he kind of helps push Seiya in the right direction or helps the team, make it a soft landing for Shota Imanaga. So I think it's all coming together as this like perfect confluence of like Shota feeling really comfortable, being very talented, and things going very, very well for them so far.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I love everything about Shota Imanaga. I've been blown away. Well, first off, Yu Darvish. I mean, how about a guy with another team helping the Cubs keep these guys? And maybe one day he returns. I mean, he's getting older in his career, but he's having the most success he's ever had, right? I mean, he's pitched four straight shutouts there. But the Japanese players are coming over and they're really killing it. I mean, it's not just Ohtani, right? And there was a time when, like you'd have one guy that would do well, like you'd have Ichiro, but then there'd be a bunch of other guys that were marginal players. These guys aren't marginal players anymore, man. Like they're just really good players. And I wonder if that Major League Baseball has taken a step down or has Japanese baseball taken a step up. But the thing that I can tell you that right now that I love the most out of the Japanese players is the culture that they bring to the clubhouse. I love the fact that they're so team oriented, right? Which starts when they're in little kids in Japan, the way that they play the game, how the honor it is to play for your high school and, like riding a bike to school instead of driving because you're on the baseball team, you're constantly working to get better and it's paying off. And I'm glad that the Cubs have, a couple of guys and I wish they had more.
Yeah, no, it is awesome for sure. And it's great that they're able to like I said, come over and have that sense of humor too, because I feel like it's so relatable for fans to it endears themselves to fans. And so I think that's great too. And fans are really like just getting behind these guys, Seiya and Shota in particular. But to your point too, I don't think it's MLB coming back. I mean, I think it was Justin Steele the other day just talking about how he feels like Major League Baseball has the most talent that it has ever had, like ever in the history of the game. And I think it's easy to agree with that, given the velocities and exit velocities and all of the stuff that we have. We have different ways of measuring it, but I feel like we're seeing something that we've never seen before almost every week or every month in baseball now. So yeah, I think it's a product of baseball in general getting smarter, getting better, finding ways to develop players faster and better as well. And it's different players. I mean, the main thing for Shota is not even just the physical tools. Like, yes, his fastball is incredibly unique. The fact that he's throwing it at like 91 to 93 miles an hour, and it's still, as unhittable as a 101 to 103 mile an hour fastball would be. But I think it's the cerebral nature of it. He's so intelligent. He's so smart in so many ways. And that's, one, helped him adjust. And two, it helps him like adjust to the game in general. And two, it helps him adjust in start. And that leads to success immediately.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think that baseball in Japan and even Korea, right, over in Asia has gotten a lot better. And that's why you want to play these major league games, guys, over in Japan, over in Mexico, over in Europe, because you share the game with an audience that might not see the game, might not know about it, and then all of a sudden you start to foster some more love for baseball. Not that Japan needed that already. I mean, they've loved it for a long time, but to see Korea, like guys from Korea coming over and we lost a guy, Jonathan Perlaza, who I felt like should have been on the 40-man roster, to a team in Korea, and he's going to get paid big money. I think he's making like $1 million to go over there and play or somewhere in that neighborhood. You can't, fault him for that, but it just shows you that the sport's growing internationally, and those guys are doing nothing but help the game. And then when you have the World Baseball Classic, it's always so intense. But you recognize, like, there was a time I broadcasted the World Baseball Classic on Cubs.com one time, and the Cubs played Japan, and I didn't recognize any of the guys. I bet you if the same game happened now, that most of the lineup, we would know who they were.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the game is just growing internationally, and that's awesome. And like you said, these games that are being played, MLB games that are being played over in Asia and stuff, is awesome. So I hope to see more of it. I don't think it's official yet about the Cubs playing over there next year. Probably will be soon, but I'm really looking forward to that series out there. I think that'll just be a ton of fun.
Yeah, right. You got to go. That's a series you definitely need to cover, right? You get to go out there.
Yeah.
On the other end of it, here's a question from Chuck Oak. He says, what do you think the future holds for Kyle Hendricks? You want me to tell you what I think first, or Tony, you go first, and then I'll tell you what I think. And I don't know what you're going to say, but I know what I'm going to say.
Yeah. So Chuck, that is the $16.5 million question. I don't think anybody knows right now, including Kyle himself, including Jed Hoyer, the Cubs front office, Craig Counsell, the Cubs coaching staff. I don't know what the future holds. I mean, he pitched yesterday out of relief, and it wasn't the easiest situation. Cubs were losing 1-0. It was the 8th inning. But, he struggled. He left a bunch of pitches in the middle of the plate. I think he was fortunate that Marcell Ozuna came a couple feet away from a 3-run homer, ended up being a sacrifice fly. But, this could have 2 runs in 2 innings of relief could have ended up being 4 runs in an inning or 2 innings of relief. So it's funny with Hendricks because his velocity is actually the best it's been in about 5 years since pre-2020, which is crazy. And to think about, his velocity is good. Everything, the metrics all seem to be good on his pitches. And at 34, you wouldn't think that a guy would physically just fall off the cliff like this. And again, the velocities and all of that other stuff illustrate that hasn't happened. He hasn't fallen off physically. But for whatever reason, physically, his mechanics are out of whack. And that elite command that he's had has just failed him all year. It's just disappeared. He's working, I know, to get it back. I thought his last couple starts against the Pirates, the command was a bit better. There was some bad luck, a couple bad pitches. But honestly, every starting pitcher has bad pitches in every outing, and guys pop it up. I always think back to what Dan Herron said is guys pop up in batting practice sometimes. So, he never wanted to walk a guy on 3-0. He would just groove fastballs down the middle because he just didn't want to give free passes. I think Hendricks has struggled with some free passes. He's also had some bad luck in that, it seems like every mistake he makes gets hit really hard, whether it's out of the ballpark or not. And I think, it's just, the command hasn't been there. It's a lot of pitches catching way too much of the plate, leading to singles, leading to extra base hits, leading to singles in bad spots, to 2-strike hits. All of these things that are issues for pitchers are happening for Kyle right now. And I do think if there's anybody that's able to get out of it, it is Kyle Hendricks. And I think the peripheral numbers, the velocity, the health, all illustrates that like it's very possible he will. It's a big question. It's a struggle. It's frustrating for everybody involved, including the fans for sure. But I would bet personally that Hendricks will find a way out of it. And when he does, I don't know if he makes more starts or if he just is more of a 1 to 3 inning relief guy. I don't know. But it's going to bear watching for sure over the next few weeks and few months of the season. I mean, this is last year the deal. The Cubs picked up that $16.5 million option for him this year. But it's definitely not the way Kyle would like to go out of his Cubs career, and not the way the Cubs would want him to go out either.
Look, I love him, man. What's up, John? Good to see all you guys, by the way. I love Kyle. I've known him forever. I saw him when he was rehabbing in Tennessee. I love him. And I hope you're right, because it would be great. And every time he talks, he's just like so positive and he says the right thing and he's so smart. So accountable, man. When I talked to him and I said, man, I know you're frustrated. I could feel the frustration. But the issue that I think that he has is the issue that all of us run into, and that's father time. And it's a young man's game, and it's like you can't outrace father time. So I would love to see him do that, but man, I just feel like the future for him's either going to be in Arizona working or do like some sort of like injury type thing or DFA'd in the long run. Because when these guys come back, you're right. Like you can't give up the type of runs that he gives up. Like, and if his name wasn't Kyle Hendricks and he wasn't paid $16 million, he'd be gone already, and that's the tough part about the business of it. It's like, it's not trying to bury someone because you don't like them. I love them. But when I look at the roster and I look at the success that this team has had, and then I look at the failures that they've had, he's at the top of the list of the failures. And it's not even close. I mean, it's like, it's so hard to watch because he's been so great for so many years. But I think back to Jim Palmer, at the end. I mean, he was a Hall of Famer. And I think back to like Jake Arrieta at the end of his career. You're like, man, what's going on right now? And I kind of feel like that's probably where we're at. But I'll tell you, Tony, I agree with what you're saying too. I mean, like the fact that he's throwing harder for him, but how is he missing so much? Is it just to the point and where you can't do the things that you used to be able to do? You'll find out the older you get. I find out every day, we go out and have some beers. Yeah. It's not the same as it used to be. Okay.
No, I mean, trust me, I'm getting into my late 30s now. And I definitely feel that for sure. Athletic activities or not. But I kind of just go back to like, I mean, yeah, at 34, like this shouldn't happen, like for a guy like Hendricks who takes really good care of himself. And the Arrieta comp is one that I've heard make a lot, and I've admitted, I've thought about that. Obviously, Jake Arrieta was a legend with the Cubs and came back and really struggled, and it was not the most like honorable way, I guess, to go out just in general, right? Like he struggled a lot, and the team ended up having to DFA him and release him in late August there. But I think the difference was like Arrieta struggled for years, and Hendricks had some struggles up and down, but he had the shoulder injury, came back last year and had a phenomenal year. It was the third start off the IL. He took a no-hitter into the 8th or 9th inning against the Giants. So I don't think it falls off the cliff that fast where a guy suddenly sees his ERA jump 7 points and his WHIP jump, more than double in year over year, when at age 33, he's like an all-star level contributor or close to it. He was the Cubs' second best starter for most of last season. And then to this year, be a guy with a 10.5 ERA. Like that doesn't make sense to me. Again, there's an element of luck in this game. I do think luck has not been on Kyle's side. He just also hasn't executed. And he admitted earlier in the season, the first 4 or 5 starts he had, that he felt like mentally he was not in a great place either. He felt like the focus was off, and it was easy for things to snowball on him out in starts where when things would kind of go bad, it certainly affects your confidence. You're a human being out there, and when things are not going well and you're frustrated and you just want to be relied on as a team and you want to win. And Kyle spent several years where the team hasn't won or made it to the playoffs, and he just wants more than anything to get back to that point. I get it. I get the pressure that he puts on himself and all of that. So I think maybe there's a little bit of mental, a little bit of physical for sure, a little bit of bad luck, and a little bit of like guys struggle at some points. And we saw Marcus Stroman have a 9.5 ERA for over a month last year when he was a Cy Young candidate and a candidate to be the starter for the All-Star game in the first 3 months of the season, then really struggled for a month, then goes on the IL, comes back and struggles again. So Stroman struggled for basically the same period of time to almost the same level that Kyle Hendricks has, but it's different. Hendricks is doing it at the start of the season where Stroman had this incredible path and then struggled towards the end of the year. And for both guys, injuries were in the middle of that too. I mean, Kyle was on the IL for more than 2 weeks with a back injury. So it's a super interesting case. Like you said, Mick, you said it perfectly. The fact that he is Kyle Hendricks makes it so much more awkward, but also so much more interesting in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Someone we all love, it's like not like someone we like. I mean, someone we love for so many reasons. All right, guys, get in the comments and throw up questions as Tony and I talk some Cubs baseball on this Friday. John and Donnie both want to know about Brennan Davis. I'll tell you this, guys. Brennan Davis was tearing the cover off of the ball. I don't know if he was going to get to come to the big leagues or not, but I bet you that they were considering it because he is on the 40-man and they can't hit up there right now, which is something we'll get into here in a second. But he left with the trainer and he didn't play yesterday. They are not going to tell us what the injury is most of the time for minor league players. So if I was there, I might know if I watched. Unless you heard something, normally it's it's one of those things like they don't have to tell you and they don't want you in the training room and they don't want you to ask about injuries. But if he's not on the IL, then it tells me that it's something that's day to day. But this guy's got the worst luck, man. I mean, just the worst. There was nobody playing better baseball in the world than him.
Yeah. No, it was awesome to see because he's another guy that's easy to root for. He has this great story, being raised by a single mom and the hard work that he has put in his career just to get to the point where he was the Cubs consensus top prospect. And then, it's always tough to see, guys struggle and prospects flame out for sure. But to see a guy's career get robbed because of injuries is difficult. And Brennan's like performance fell off the map in AAA in what was that, 22, right? And it was, then it was revealed that he had a ton of back pain. They didn't know why. He ends up having surgery, coming back, then has a core injury last year. And all of that has really sapped his power and his offensive ability and obviously just his ability to stay on the field. And I don't know what this injury is. I haven't heard anything either. And I'm with you, Mick. I think it's positive news that he's not on the IL, at least not yet. And hopefully he doesn't, because it was such a good story to see him come back and showcase a talent that made him a top prospect in baseball, the top prospect in the Cubs system, and just a guy, again, that's easy to root for, that you could see impacting the team and being a part of, whether it's at Wrigley Field or for some other team in the big leagues, a guy that could be an everyday player. So I really hope that he gets back to health soon, that it's a very brief injury. And I'd personally just love to see him at Wrigley. I love the story. It's an easy thing to root for. And I want guys who are very talented at the game, who have done everything right, get the opportunity and not be robbed of a major league debut or a career in the major leagues because of health. He's
a good guy. Like you said, I've never been blown away by his game. I thought he was pretty good, but not Owen Casey good, not Pete Crow Armstrong good, not Jonathan Perlaza good, not Canario good. I mean, whatever. I mean, but he's good. And I want him to prove me wrong. Like I love it when I see these guys and I'm like, man, Casey McGee was one of those guys. I'm like, this guy, how did this guy, what happened? But good for you, man. Like where a guy takes the next step, and does all the things that it takes to be successful. But somebody put in their trade bait. Look, the Cubs are going to be making deals at this deadline. You can bet your ass on that. Okay. And all of these minor league players that aren't Owen Casey and maybe James Triantos and maybe a couple other guys are going to be potentially traded to make this Cubs big league team better and have a chance to win the World Series. But so we'll find out. So, bottom line is that. Now, here's another question, Tony. I want to pull it up here. Twig Woodman says, this team lacks an identity, too many business type attitudes, not enough raw energy. So I think of the team as Dansby Swanson is the team leader, right? He's making, public comments about signing Bellinger. Last year, he goes to the front office and says, don't sell at the deadline. Don't get rid of us. We're going to compete, which they did. So but he is a business type guy, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think on this? I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, interesting name too, Twig Woodman. That got my attention right away. But yeah, I agree with you, Mick. I mean, if you want to crown one guy, if you like put a C on their chest in the Cubs clubhouse right now, it is Dansby for sure. He's the guy. I think there's a lot of guys. Hector Neris is definitely a leader behind the scenes, and especially with the Latin players, but in general. And my colleague Andy Martinez actually wrote like a great story for MarqueeSportsNetwork.com on Hector Neris's leadership.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I mean, Dansby's a part of it. Hector is a big part. Jameson Tyone and Ian Happ and Nico Horner, Cody Bellinger, these guys are all part of leadership. Kyle Hendricks in his own way. All those guys I just mentioned are more of the business-like guys. And that's what you'll find from leaders in baseball. I mean, David Ross, when he was around, was always a very like business-like leader. And Anthony Rizzo was the face of the Cubs, but I think, he was a leader in some regards, but he wasn't always necessarily like the leader in the clubhouse. And so he certainly showed some emotion and stuff, but like Javi Baez was a leader in some ways too, but he showed a lot more of the flair and the raw energy that you're talking about. Christopher Morel shows that right now too. And, we see it from Shota. We see raw energy from every pitcher on the team. I feel like from Assad shows it, and Mark Leiter Jr. every time he's out there shows it. So Adbert Alzolay is hurt, but he was one that I always felt like had a ton of energy. I mean, the People's Fist celebration he had when he was in the closer's role. So I think that the team does have energy, but to me right now, it's not a lack of identity. It's the energy's not there because like the offense isn't going, like there's not a ton for fans to cheer about. There's not a ton for players to cheer about when you're struggling every game right now you're getting into the fifth or sixth inning, either still looking for your first hit, which has happened a bunch recently, or looking for your first run in the middle and late innings of the game. It's tough to really get into it as a pitcher, as a hitter, as any member of the team. So I think that's the issue right now. And it's not for lack of trying. I mean, they're all very unified and pulling on the same rope in the same direction. And I think they'll get there. It's just one of the ways a baseball season goes. It's offensive lulls happen. They happen because you face good pitchers, as the Cubs have recently. It happens when guys slump all at once, as has also happened recently. So I think the lack of energy right now is simply the lack of scoring runs and the lack of holding leads. This whole 7-game homestand the Cubs were on, they didn't hold the lead once. Not once.
Yeah.
They won 2 games, both walk-off variety, and in the game they did not lead until the very last second of it. So it's that to me. I think there's plenty of energy behind the scenes, but it's very business-like because that's the way you have to go through these tough stretches to not ride the roller coaster. And Dansby knows that. Nico, Craig Counsell, all these guys know that because if you ride the roller coaster, then when things are bad like this, you're Carlos Zambrano slamming into Gatorade coolers and throwing bats on the field. And there's maybe a time and place for that, but it doesn't actually help anything and it doesn't affect the product on the field. Being businesslike does because it keeps you even keeled and it tries that the idea is to get out of these slumps and these low points faster. I realize that's not happening for the Cubs right now, but that's the best path forward is this business-like approach, not raw energy and emotion.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. First off, Neris, great point. I wasn't even thinking about that, but hey, we're going to do the W flag thing. We're going to have a meeting in here and just tell everybody how important winning is. They're struggling right now, to me, because of the offense, and I think the reason is because we've got guys coming back from injuries, and it's like it's hard to stay basically current. With your timing when you're not playing, and then you go, oh, I'm going to go play a game in the minor leagues or 2 games in the minor leagues. You get back up there. It's tough to do. It's going to take one person to get hot, and then everybody will get hot. Morel's got the ball he fouled off of his foot. He's hitting the ball hard, but not, getting the same exact carry that he was getting before that. You got obviously Dansby and Nico just returning. Seiya's just getting back. Bellinger's getting back. I like Bellinger's swing, but it just hasn't fallen. And I think the offense is going to be okay. But something you said reminds me of something that I want to bring up. My very first job in baseball, the manager was Russ Nixon, and he had managed in the major leagues for the Reds and the Braves. Now, he was given two of the worst teams ever. Right. So after the big red machine, he was the guy that came in after they got rid of everyone, and then they fired him. Right. And then he was with the Braves, and they got rid of him for Bobby Cox. Right. So it was before the Braves were the Braves that won 14 straight. But he was an old guy. He was old school, unwritten rules type guy. And I was the broadcaster, and I could go into his office and drink Blanton's whiskey after the game, and he would talk to me about baseball. And what he said was exactly what you said, is that you have to stay even keel through the course of a season because there's so many games. And to keep the team consistent, you don't want to show a lot of emotion. Right. Carlos Zambrano is a great example of that, So you want guys that bring fire and all of that stuff. But at the same time, you've got to hold that consistency. It's almost like you're playing cards. You don't want to show your hand, like whether you're happy or you're sad. You just keep that poker face. So great question. All right, here's another one. Stole it breezing. Who is your most underappreciated Cub, past and present? Man, I love these kind of questions. This is where I can really dig into my 40 years of Cubdom.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have an easy one for past Mick. It's Aramis Ramirez for me. He's not quite as underappreciated in 2024 because he just made the Cubs Hall of Fame this year. But I feel like when I first started covering the team was the tail end of his Cubs career, and I lived in Chicago all my life. I grew up a Cubs fan and rooting for this team and watching this team all the time. And I feel like Aramis never really got his due. And I'm glad to see that he has in the Cubs Hall of Fame now, because go back and look at his numbers. I mean, to be a power hitter, to post up all the time that he did, 30 and 100 just about every year without striking out. I think he struck out 100 times in his career one time, I believe, in a season. He ended his career, I believe, with more RBI than strikeouts, or at least very close, which is a really, really tough thing to do. I mean, his numbers were not to the level of Manny Ramirez, but they were not super far off offensively. And he was a big part of some big teams. And so I think Aramis is underappreciated in general. I think he's getting his appreciation more that we basically see Cubs baseball happen, and the longevity that he had as well. And so I think that's an easy one for me for past.
You guys, I'm going way back, but I loved this guy. And I still do, although he's managing another team. But Davey Martinez, man, I never understood why he wasn't in the lineup. As a kid, I'm like, this guy's a hit machine, a clutch hitter, good contact guy, great, smart player, obviously a World Series manager, but was with us too. I just loved him, but this is one where you could sit around and you could go, what about Bobby Dernier, man? The way he played defense, and all the great plays that he made. You guys get in the comment section and put down your most underappreciated Cubs. And I'm sure some of these people are going to go back to the 50s, man, which is cool about doing this channel. On the current team, who's the most underappreciated Cub?
I think it's Mark Leiter Jr. because he's been the glue of this pitching staff for several years now. He came up as a starter in 22 and struggled, then moved to the bullpen, then was actually DFA'd in that offseason, came back to the Cubs on a minor league deal.
Yeah.
Last year ended up making the opening day bullpen and is huge. And he was a factor of why the Cubs have not had a lefty in their bullpen for much of last year, because he's so good against lefties with that splitter. And he's become this relief ace. And he just did it again this week, coming in against the Braves and getting out of two guys on or one guy on, whatever the situation was. Can't remember, but he struck out three guys in a row. And energy, emotion, he has a sub-1 ERA. He's been lights out, I think, for basically 3 years running in the bullpen now. And he doesn't quite get enough due. I feel like maybe in circles, in Cubs fan circles and stuff, but I think like nationally speaking, like he's one of the elite relievers in the game to me, and I think he is underappreciated at least league wide, and I think in terms of like Cubs fans, like he's been a total ace of this pitching staff just from a bullpen standpoint, not the rotation.
This guy, for me, and you guys that have been watching since I started the channel, you'll know this. Now, I think he's getting a little due now, but I just didn't get why Javier Assad is
I knew you were
not.
gonna say that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I've been saying this since last year.
Yeah.
I mean, they took him out of that game against the Reds where he's like mowing everybody down, and we end up losing, 2-1 last year, and then you end up one game back. Let the guy, like, me, Tony. I appreciate analytics, but I don't have to have analytics to figure out what the difference between winning and losing is. It's like I can drink this drink whether I have this straw or I open the top and drink it like that, right? Yeah. Some people are so locked on analytics, they think the only way that you can drink is that if you use the straw, that which is the analytics. But the cup's that big. Analytics is just a part of it. It's a tool to get to what you want to, right? And I get it. His stuff doesn't, make all the analytics crowd people happy, but the guy gets outs, man. And he gives you a great start every time he goes out there. Like, if I'm the Cubs, and I don't know if they've really announced it or not, but he needs to be in the starting rotation. He should never go back to the bullpen unless maybe he struggles or something. It honestly, it's changed somewhat because I think Craig Counsell's like seeing it now, and maybe it's that, maybe it's just the continued success that he's had. But man, I feel like he is Mr. Underappreciated.
He is, and it's funny, like even Counsell and Jed and stuff. I mean, they weren't going to put him in the rotation to start the year. It was only because of Jameson Taillon's injury that Assad, made the rotation. So it's crazy. And then each start, I mean, like Jed was honest and was like, yeah, I don't think we were projecting this, and even Tommy Hotovy said as well that like he remembers in 21, 22 when he like first saw Assad like in spring and stuff start making some appearances, that he remembers like being interested by the guy, but nobody saw this coming, where he has like the 4th or 5th best ERA in the last 2 years among starters in Major League Baseball. Like, that's incredible. It's insane. And it's a credit to him. Like you said, Mick, there's nothing on it that jumps out at you from an analytics standpoint, but he makes pitches, he strands runners, and he's done it for so long that like it's not become luck anymore. It's like, okay, he has a legitimate skill that he's able to strand runners and with runners in scoring position in leverage moments, he's able to make pitches and get out of it. And that old adage that he's a pitch maker is so true. So yeah, I mean, it's cool to see. It's fun for sure. I think the big issue with him is he only threw 130 innings last year. His career high is 145-ish. So where does he get in terms of innings? I mean, he's at the 150, 160 range, probably max. Right now he's on pace for 170 to 172 range, something like that. So the Cubs will have to manage his innings. I don't think I would be surprised if he went over 150. So they'll have to figure out ways to do it, whether skipping starts, putting him in the bullpen for a bit, whatever it may be. They're not going to like run him into the ground, because also if you make the playoffs, he's 100% a playoff starter for you right now. So you have to factor any postseason innings into that 150, because they don't want to hurt him for next year or for beyond. This is a 26-year-old that's a huge part of the pitching staff moving forward now.
Yeah, totally agree, man. And the other thing too, and you just kind of reminded me of this, and I'm going to give the Cubs front office a thumbs up, right? And is that I have complained about the minor league pitchers, starters not pitching enough for years because they hadn't, right? And going back to Theo, and it would be like guys like him. He didn't fall into this trap because they didn't think he was a prospect, so they let him pitch. And you've heard me say that before too, probably. And then and he just developed the ability to pitch, and part of that development was pitching the third time through the lineup and getting into trouble and getting out of it. And obviously he's Houdini. And I think that he's going to get better at not putting himself in that position. At least I hope so, in the big leagues. With that said, I've noticed that the Cubs minor league starters are ticking up now as far as pitching more innings, which is, I think, a good thing. You're going to have injuries, but the problem is that the guys weren't pitching and they weren't getting to the big leagues. Right. So it's not like, okay, Jordan Wicks doesn't fall into that. He didn't get to pitch that much. He was on the real strict pitch count, and he got there. But then he got there, and it was like, hey, wait a second. I've never pitched 6 innings before, except once, right? Now you want me to pitch 7? Come on, man. Assad wasn't in that formula. He pitched, and then he's done well. And Ben Brown didn't really pitch that much, but I'm seeing a lot more, being a little bit more strategic with how you use that, right? Like, so Cade Horton is a guy that's going to be kind of on the same program as Jordan Wicks from what I see, which is fine. Put him in bubble wrap. I get that. But then other guys like use the Assad, which is a great program where you say, hey, I'm going to let this guy just develop. Guys like what if Walker Powell ends up being somebody that you can count on and he turns into a starter? It's not a prospect, but you let him go out there and pitch. He was great last year, had more wins in the Southern League and had one of the best ERAs. He's in AAA now. I think you're going to develop more pitching if you let some of these guys pitch. So I'm excited about that. All right, let's get on to another question here. Another pitching question. As much as I like Ben Brown as a starter, what are your thoughts on him being a middle reliever or closer? This is a great question, Tony. I'm going to let you handle this.
Yeah, I love the idea. I think he can do anything you ask, and he has already done anything the Cubs have asked of him. He 4 shutout innings against the Braves' high-powered offense yesterday as a starter. He's pitched he's pitched essentially everything but save situations. So I think Neris has the closer's role kind of locked down right now. It's been a high wire act a lot. He's walked a lot of guys, but I think he's fine there. Other than Leiter, getting other guys to like set up for Neris is key, and I think Brown can certainly be a part of that. To me, Brown's best asset is the ability to go multiple innings, and I love the outing. I think it was in Pittsburgh or whatever it was recently where he had like 3.1, 3.2 innings of relief, and that was awesome. He just shut down the rest of the game from the bullpen, and I love guys like that. Like when Keegan did it a couple of years ago, and he was this dominant weapon that you could utilize in a bunch of different ways because what that does is that resets the bullpen. It gives everybody else a day off where they don't have to even get up and warm up, let alone come into a game. So then they're refreshed for the next day. So then you got Leiter and Neris, and when Merriweather is back, when Almonte's back, when maybe Adbert's back, these like top guys, when Smiley, Luke Little, whoever ascends into these roles, these leverage roles, then they don't have to pitch. And so I think that's a super valuable thing. And to me, I think Brown is best utilized in that role. Like I think it would be the ideal is one that manage his innings. Cause we talk about that with Assad. Brown's probably going to be like 120, 125 in innings total this year. He can't be in the rotation full time, but I think using those 3 innings that he has every 3 or 4 days to maximizing that would be the best weapon for me. So I think coming out of the bullpen, picking your spots with him, that would be the way that I see him doing, because imagine like in September and October, like that's what you saw and can see from a guy like Ben Brown too, is a multi-inning relief weapon.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Last question, Tony, on our conversation today. Pete Crow Armstrong, PCA, Hollywood Pete, whoever you guys want to refer to him as, should 100% be on the team, if only for energy and the hunger he brings. I agree. I think he's clearly one of the best 26 players on the team, but I get the math not working out for him. I also like having Luis Vasquez's glove on the team right now, because there's a big drop off when Dansby Swanson's not playing shortstop. He's coming off of an injury. But your thoughts on Pete Crow Armstrong? You got to see the Hollywood a little bit out there, but it's not like he's batting 400 either.
No, it's not, for sure. And he wasn't slugging or drawing a ton of walks, but yeah, in terms of the energy aspect, like he had that. It was fun to watch. It was fun to watch him patrol center field, and that triple that he had, wherever that was, Atlanta, I think maybe, where he was the fastest recorded time in MLB this year from first or from home to third. So that was awesome. It's cool to see that, the fire and passion that he has. It's a lot of fun. And I like Pete. I think he's going to have a really long career ahead of him. But when you have Bellinger and Seiya, who absolutely deserve to play every single day, Hap's track record indicates that he should play regularly, if not every day. And then what Tauchman has brought to this team the past couple of years as well. I mean, you have 3 or 4 outfielders at any given time that should be playing every day. Even with the DH spot, you could get all 4 guys in the lineup. There's just not regular time for Pete. That's all it comes down to. And he's 22. He does still have some maturing, some developing to do. it doesn't make sense for him to sit up here all year for 5 months and not play every day, or play start once a week and get maybe 7 at bats in a week or plate appearances and come in defensively or pinch running. Send him down to AAA, bring him up in August, September. I think he'll be up before September, first injury that happens in the outfield. But yeah, I love his energy, his passion, his defense. I mean, his WAR is great. It's like, I think, forget who said it. I think Alex Cohen said it on the AAA broadcast on Marquee the other day, that PCA's WAR is like above Julio Rodriguez and Ronald Acuna Jr. And PCA spent half the time in the big leagues, but the defense is real. The base running is real. I think they have an outfield glut right now, but we'll see him in the big leagues for an extended period later this summer.
Awesome. Well, Tony, great to see you, my friend. And hopefully we'll do this again soon. What do you got going on at Marquee? What can people read that you have written, and where can they check out your podcast? All the doings of Tony Andracki.
Yeah, head to MarqueeSportsNetwork.com. I mentioned my colleague Andy Martinez had a great story on Hector Neris, but Mick, you just mentioned Luis Vasquez, and Andy had an awesome story about, he had 40 members of his family at Wrigley the other day for his MLB debut. So a lot of fun stuff happening with young players, and as the team works its way back into competing. But next week we'll see Cubs in Milwaukee, Counsell's first trip there. So that'll be a lot of fun. Stay tuned there, and Cubs Weekly Podcast, and we'll have you covered on every platform for Marquee.
All right, guys. Hey, like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Thanks for hanging out. All the people that got in the comment section, we appreciate it. And go back and rewatch it. If you missed any of the show, you know that it'll be on there, and you can rewatch the entire thing with Tony Andracki. All right, thanks, guys, and go Cubs. We'll talk to you soon.